Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. I want to first say Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers who listen and subscribe to this podcast. I so appreciate you, and the role of mother is one that we could never take for granted. It's a role that should never be devalued, as we know that the woman or the mother is the first teacher, the first doctor, the first nurse, and we can really never exhaust the value of mother and motherhood. And in this episode, I want to feature a guest that I had about 2 years ago now, and this guest is Sonja Prince. Sonja is a beautiful and sweet woman who I met in New Orleans, and when I began the podcast, she was someone that I had in mind because she had such a remarkable story in her journey of motherhood during the battle that her son had with childhood cancer. And after his passing, Sonja started a foundation, the Kwesi Prince Foundation, in honor of her son, serving other families who are dealing with the unfortunate diagnosis of childhood cancer. It is Mother's Day, and we are all celebrating Mother's Day in different ways. And some of us are grieving the loss of our mothers. We have mothers on this day that don't have their children with them. And, you know, in thinking about all of the different ways that we experience Mother's Day, I wanted to share this interview of a insightful and an inspirational and an aspirational mother. Sonja continues to do great things where she lives in St. Louis, and I want you to listen to this episode and be reminded of how grateful you are and how fortunate you are in your life, and also think about the strength that Sonja and so many mothers like her have. All mothers are not with their children, and all children are not with their mothers. So in honor of Mother's Day, and in thinking about those mothers who are celebrating in a different way, I bring you this episode with my guest, Sonja Prince.
I did not know of any parents of color starting organizations like ours, but I saw plenty of, parents of color going through the journey, and I really wanted to be there for them, because I noticed that a lot of moms, Black moms especially, that I talked to, were very, very private. They were very, very private about the journey. And sometimes I felt that they were just so alone. They were just so alone and so frustrated.
Sonja Prince is the mother of Kwesi Prince, who was diagnosed with a rare malignant brain tumor in 2010. He was just 7 years old. After 2 brain surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation, Kwesi enjoyed 15 months in remission. A relapse in 2012 was managed with another brain surgery to remove the tumor and a bone marrow transplant. Unfortunately, Kwesi relapsed a final time in 2013. His family and doctors were out of options. They lost Kwesi in April of 2014, but his spirit radiates in all who knew him. Kwesi is honored through the work of the Kwesi Prince Foundation, which is a pediatric cancer organization dedicated to supporting families suffering the devastating effects of childhood cancer with a focus on brain tumors. Sonja is the foundation's executive director and today's guest. I met Sonja at a conference in 2017. After our initial introductions, she told me about Kwesi. She told me about her personal commitment to health and wellness. She knew that to best care for him, she had to care for herself. Through the work of the foundation, she helps other parents and caregivers optimize their own health and wellness while caring for their sick children. In this episode, Sonja shares more of the mission of the Kwesi Prince Foundation, what she's learned new about herself, and how we can help the foundation with its work. With no further ado, here is my interview with Sonja Prince. Sonja, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Nora Speaks. And in the introduction, I did share a brief bit with the audience of your biography, but I want them to hear who you are in your own words.
Great. I'm glad to be here with you today, Nora, as well. Like you said, I am Sonja Prince. I am the executive director of the Kwesi Prince Foundation. Most importantly, I am Kwesi's mother. I started the foundation, of course, in his honor to help other children and families who are going through a similar journey that we went through.
Wonderful. And the foundation has been up, it's just been a short time now, right?
It has been. It's really new. We were founded in September of 2016. Yeah, so we're just close to a year and a half old.
Okay. And just in some of the research that I did, the Kwesi Prince Foundation provides support to families who are also managing the effects of childhood cancer.
Right. We, fortunately, where we live, our area, we have great support through other foundations that really focus on the children as they go through their treatment for pediatric cancer and afterwards, and some organizations that really focus on the whole family. But we really try to provide support to the parents and the caregivers, doing things as giving them ideas on self-care, because as most people with children probably know, that it's very hard to care for yourself when you have a child that's well, So when you have a sick child, it's really, really hard to focus on yourself. But it's so funny because when Kwesi was diagnosed, that was the first thing I focused on, which sounds kind of odd. But I was in the mindset that I had to keep myself healthy. I had to do all that I could so I could be there for him, because I never wanted to miss a doctor's appointment, or, he had to go through chemotherapy. And I just, couldn't risk being sick. So that is one of the things that we really try to focus on with our foundation. And we also offer financial support to bereaved parents who may not have insurance or anything for their children, because that's a common thing. People don't really think that something's going to happen to their child, so they're not financially prepared. So we try to help out there as best we can.
Wonderful. So let's talk about Kwesi for a minute. He was a bright and spirited young man from all that you shared with me about him when we talked about him. Let's talk about him.
Yeah. Well, Kwesi was. He was my baby. I have two children. He was the youngest. We had a normal life. Kwesi was perfectly healthy, just doing all the things that children do at his age. He was diagnosed when he was 7 years old, and one of the things that I try to share, because people do ask, how did you find out? And he started having headaches. We didn't think anything of it initially, because it wasn't anything that lasted a long period of time. It would come and then it would go away, but they got more severe, and they started happening in the middle of the night, and he started throwing up. So we took him to the pediatrician, and our pediatrician was great. He ordered an MRI. I feel like we were tremendously blessed because I've heard of parents whose pediatrician did not order the right test right away because they just weren't thinking the worst. And
right.
a lot of children were delayed with their diagnosis, which is really critical. But, yeah, that's how our cancer journey started. It was a very long journey. It was a little over 4 years. But Kwesi was just, he was so awesome. And I feel like he helped get us through most of it because the thing with children, and I feel like one of the biggest lessons we can learn from them is that they have this awesome ability to really stay in the moment, where we are already sometimes thinking of the outcome of the situation.
Right.
Kwesi was always, if he was feeling well, he wanted to go to the movies, or he wanted to go to school, or he just do normal things. And that really kept us grounded and kept us living through it all, just with his attitude. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but there's such a lesson that we all learned in that. But Kwesi was amazing. He was amazing through it all. He just kept his little personality through all of it. It was very seldom that he was really sad, even at his sickest point, which was amazing to me. That you can see that from a 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old. And, he kept it all the way up until the end. And he passed away when he was 11 years old. So we just try to take those lessons that we learned from that experience and make the most of our lives.
I think that's incredible. And he understood that his diagnosis was a terminal diagnosis?
I don't think that he did. I don't think, for one, it wasn't terminal in the beginning. Kwesi, he went into remission, and then he relapsed. He relapsed 3 times. And by the time he relapsed the last time, and this is another thing, Kwesi had a brain tumor. So, with the brain, it has effects on your, like he had memory issues and just cognitive issues. So by the time he relapsed the last time, I really don't know how much he understood, I don't know how much he understood, and I really don't think that he understood that it was terminal. Part because I don't think he understood. 2, because I don't think we fully accepted it because we always held out hope for that miracle. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, let me say, I think that it seems like whether he understood the nature of the diagnosis being terminal or not, I think that staying in the moment trait that you say that he had and that children have, I think that's wonderful because it reminds us to maintain our perspective on, he is a kid, and at this moment he wants ice cream. That's what kids want, and sometimes as adults we want to take in the broader picture, but right now he may just want to go to school. He might want to just hang out with his friends, and I think they help us young people stay on track onto what's most important.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, especially, when you have such a diagnosis as that. There were often times when I just wanted to shield him.
Of course.
Yeah, but I remember when Kwesi relapsed the last time, we knew that we were out of options. He actually relapsed for the last time in February. And, you never know how it's going to pan out. The doctors didn't give us any amount of time. They couldn't tell us what it would look like when we got to the end, nothing. So I remember that summer, Kwesi wanted to go to camp. We have a great camp here for children with cancer, and there are doctors there and nurses, and the kids have an amazing time. Kwesi had been there before, and he wanted to go that summer. And I was so, it's a whole week.
Right.
With him being away from home, and it is here in Missouri, but it's about 45 minutes from where we live, but I had to let him go. I learned within that last year to let Kwesi do so much, and it really taught me how to live my life now. I just had to let him go have fun and live his life and enjoy the time that he had. And I try really hard to continue to live my life that way. I find it to be very hard because now I have grief, and it's sometimes very hard when you're grieving, but I try really hard to keep that front of mind. We never know when life will change, and just to live my life the best that I can and do the things that make me happy and bring me joy. And starting the foundation was one of the main things that I wanted to do, because when you travel along the childhood cancer, pediatric cancer journey, it could feel so extremely lonely. You can have friends and family who have dealt with cancer, but it's so much different when it's a child, and you just feel so alone. And I gained so much from other moms that I learned who were on the same journey, or moms who had lost their child to cancer. They just became some of my greatest friends. And I wanted to continue that on, because parents definitely need that support, to know that they're not fighting alone with their child.
Right. I think this is important, talking about how we can support families and caregivers who are dealing with a terminal diagnosis for a child, especially something like cancer. So I think what you're doing and what the foundation is doing is wonderful in helping the parents, be as well and as healthy as they can, so that they could be, in the greatest condition as a caregiver. So for us who are family and friends or colleagues of someone who is managing this journey with their child, how can we support them? Because, a lot of times we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And so because we don't know what to say, what to do, we do nothing. And then that helps foster that isolation that you talk about.
Exactly. I think the biggest thing, and we were very fortunate on our journey when Kwesi was still here, our hospital had a brain tumor support group that we tried to go to every month, and it was just nice being there to hear other parents. But one thing that we used to always talk about is how friends and family, they would always call and check on you, and they would say, well, call me if you need anything. And we would say, that is just, I don't know what I need. When you're so overwhelmed, sometimes you just don't know what you need. And I think sometimes if people could just do simple things, then you have those parents, too, who won't ask. They won't ask.
Right.
They may know what they need, but they just won't ask. And I think, if you're a friend or family, just take them something to eat. Everybody has to eat. Or take them a gift card. That's one of the things we provide in our Tranquility tote that we give to parents, are restaurant gift cards, because, you just have those days where you just don't feel like it. Right. And I think just calling or texting, just letting them know that you are always there. Because I do remember when I could think of something that I needed, it was usually those people that always called or always texted or always checked on me. They were the first person that I called to ask to help out. And, I think the biggest thing is just being there. Let them know that you are there, because so often the journey is long. Childhood cancer journeys, they're usually really long. If a child is diagnosed with leukemia, their treatment can be 3.5 years long. That's a long time.
Right.
But for people to support them and just continue to be there, I think is the biggest thing that people can do.
Would you advise?
And when a child passes, I'm sorry.
No, please continue.
When a child passes away, when someone loses a child, I think in that aspect, it's the same thing. I noticed when I first lost Kwesi, I joined support groups, and parents would talk about how, after 1 year, people wanted them to snap out of it, or people would tell them to snap out of it, or people would tell them you just need to stay busy. I think that's another way that people can support. Just be there. Just listen. Don't judge. Just listen and be there, call and check on them, and let them, as long as they're not harming themselves, just let them go on their journey, because that too is a lifelong journey. Living life without your child, it's not really something that you ever get used to, I don't think.
Or expect to have to happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Would you advise family members to seek out support groups to find how to support? I think I remember when my mom died, and she died young and somewhat unexpectedly, and you kind of, some days you're great, and then some days you're not so great. And like you said, people just think, well, it's been a year now, you should be doing a little bit better. And they don't know that there is no time limit, there is no expiration, for grief.
Exactly.
And so I thought that if people, would seek out some kind of support or guidance in helping people who have this kind of grief, I think that would be useful.
That would be. Or read a book. There are even books that are written on how to support. Because even the grieving parent, that was one of the things. Luckily, my mom is a social worker, so there are certain things that she kind of told me, or when I would tell her, she understood and helped me work through them. But one of the things I didn't understand was that grief is not linear. It's just not. I would have a good day and be like, oh my God, like I finally had a good day. Like this is awesome. And then the next day, it was just like I just lost Kwesi. And I did not understand that. I mean, I've dealt with loss before, but just never on that magnitude. And I just couldn't understand how one day you felt like you were, gaining traction, and then the next day it's like it just happened. And my mom, told me it's not linear, it's circular. So you're going to have good days, have bad days. Just be easy. Just be easy on yourself. So that's even one thing that that I had to learn. I will say that because I can only speak for me, and I do think that is one thing that supporters have to learn too. I remember I post a lot on social media, especially in the beginning of my grief, because writing was just very therapeutic, and letting people know just the journey. And I remember, posting and being so thankful when I had a good day, and then a couple of days later it was just awful. And I remember she was the sweetest person, one of my neighbors, like, well, just go and do such and such, because I talked about something that I had did that day, and it made me so happy, the day when I was having a good day. And that's another thing. It doesn't work like that. If it did, then we could keep it up. But, one day you can look at your child's picture and smile. The next day you can look at that same picture and it kills you. So, I think it's just grief is one of those difficult topics. And I think supporters just may want to, like you said, look for education. that may help you support that person through it.
Right, right. So let me ask you, what do you think that you learned most about yourself in this journey?
I learned how strong I am. And I learned that I can do anything as long as I try, even the hardest of things. It's funny because it's been something that I'm trying to relearn because one of the things with grief and me is that it caused me a lot of self-doubt, where when Kwesi was here and as we went along the journey and as it got harder and harder and I realized that doctors couldn't save him, and I started feeling like the doctors didn't know much more than I did, I really learned to use my voice and listen to what God was telling me and my instinct and follow through with it with no doubt. Mm-hmm. And now I'm trying to rekindle that because somewhere in grief I've started to doubt myself a little bit, or be afraid to do those things that scare me, where, with Kwesi, I did a lot of things that scare me, even like letting him go to camp.
Right.
That was scary for me, but I did it. And just a lot of things with his care. Sometimes I went against doctor's orders, and I ended up being right. And I worked with a great medical team where they would listen, and they would say, Mom, you got an instinct for a reason. We'll go with it and see how that works. But I think that was the biggest lesson for me to learn. And there are so many things that I am still trying to do with my life, and I just need to remember those things, that there is so much that I can do. I just have to trust that instinct that I have.
Right. I think that's great advice for all of us in any stage. And I think it's easier, when we're advocating for our babies, I tell my children, I said, I become a mama bear.
Exactly.
So it can be easy, to have that fearlessness and that forthrightness when it's for our family or friends, especially for our children. But then sometimes when it comes for ourselves, not so sure.
Exactly. But I'm trying really hard to get back there because
wonderful.
I do think that there were a lot of things that we did or I did as a mom that extended Kwesi's life, because Kwesi's brain tumor was pretty deadly. He had a brain tumor called pineoblastoma. But for him to live 4 years, that was pretty miraculous. And I think it's just because a lot of the things that I did that, I just stepped out there on faith and did certain things that helped extend his life. So, and I'm trying to do those things to make my life more joyful.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what did you learn about Kwesi? Talked about the trait of children of being able to be in the moment. What did you learn about him, or what came out of him that was strengthened or enhanced during such a difficult time?
Well, I will have to tell you, when Kwesi was diagnosed, not only did I not think I was going to make it, but I never thought he would be able to endure the journey, because Kwesi was so shy and timid and just very to himself. You didn't see his inner strength until we embarked on that journey. But oh my goodness, his strength was amazing. It was just amazing to watch, and it was amazing to see him change, because he came out of the shyness. I guess I don't know if he would have grown out of it, or if it was because of the situation. We were at the hospital all the time. There were always these people around us. In the beginning, he was very scared. It was just very hard because he was just very scared, didn't want to go. But unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunate, I don't know, children adapt. And he was friends with the nurses and the doctors, and his little personality just always, it was just always shining. He just watching him go through that was amazing. And I am so thankful that I shared our journey. For so long in the beginning, I didn't share a lot on social media. There is this platform called Caring Bridge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
that's Caring Branch?
Caring Bridge, like you cross over a bridge of water. Mm-hmm. And it's for, people who have illnesses. And it's a website, kind of like social media, but it's more private, and so I would have to give people, the password or whatever, and they can get updates. So I always did that during our journey, just because it was easier for the people who knew to keep up. I couldn't call everybody every time something was going on. But when Kwesi relapsed the first time, that is when I went on Facebook, because I could not carry it. It was just so it was just so heavy. I couldn't hold it. And I remember sharing and how people were like, "Oh my goodness, Sonja, I had no idea that you were going through all of this." And then Facebook at that time, before I shared, was kind of my happy place. It was kind of my place when I wanted to escape it.
Right.
But like I said, after he relapsed, I just couldn't. And one of the things I'm so happy I did was share him, because I have seen how it has changed other people's lives and how they even parent their children, or how they view their lives. So many things are not important. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. So many things are just not important. Just let that go and live your life. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I am glad that I've done through this journey, that I've shared our journey.
Yeah. I think, Sonja, I think the community of friends that you have, or associates, or even acquaintances, even if it's through social media, I believe that we all benefit in you and others sharing the journey, because, one thing about life that is expected is that there's always the unexpected, and so whether we are a friend, a family member of someone who has a sick child, or we could become the parent or caregiver, to a sick child, by others sharing their experiences, not only do we find out, crucial resources, but we kind of also know what to expect. So even when you would talk to your mom about your grief, and she would explain, well, let you know that, grief is circular, it's not linear. So I think that, Sonja, what you've done by sharing is that you've opened Kwesi, up to all of us, and you've opened the world, or you opened yourself up so that we can all benefit from it. And I think that it's incredible, the journey that you've taken, and the energy and spirit that you have, that you share with others, so that they're not alone, or they're not facing the unexpected, because they can have you as a reference point.
Right. And that's my whole purpose. My whole purpose is to do just that. When Kwesi was diagnosed, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but his brain tumor was really, really rare. And I remember after they told me what it was, I went online to try to find someone who has that. And, I couldn't find anybody. And there were two kids that popped up, and they popped up through St. Jude's website. And I thought to myself, if I call St. Jude, they're not going to give me their information. If best, they're probably going to take my information, and maybe they'll get in contact with them. I don't know. And I need to speak with somebody right now.
Right.
Well, one of the parents, I went on YouTube, and I remember searching for it. And one of the parents that I saw at St. Jude, she made one YouTube video that had to do with her son's journey. And I sent her a message through YouTube, and she contacted me, and I talked to her. And she now is one of our biggest supporters. She is such a dear friend to me, and I have still to meet her in person. But I told myself that as soon as I got to a place where I could give more, once I got over the initial shock, that I would be that person to someone else. And so that really is what the foundation and what it's sharing, that's really what it's all about, exactly what you said, because I made a vow that I would be that person, because I always tell her, I don't know if you know, maybe you do know, because her son was diagnosed with the same thing. Maybe you do know what you calling me meant, but I felt like she saved my life, because I couldn't breathe. It's one thing to know that your child has this diagnosis, but it's a whole nother thing when you can't find anyone who shares that diagnosis. So yeah, that is, Nora, that's our whole mission, just to be there for others. If they need us to be, just to listen or whatever we could do to help them get through the journey.
Right, and I think that's wonderful. And that's why I asked you to be on the Nora Speaks podcast, because I like to highlight people in organizations that I believe are being the movement, meaning making impacts into the lives of other people in various ways. And certainly the Kwesi Prince Foundation is making impacts into the lives of family members and caregivers who are impacted, by juvenile cancer. And so that's why I wanted you to be on the program, because of exactly what you just stated.
Mm-hmm. And another point I wanted to bring up as to why I started the foundation. First and foremost, to be there for people. Another reason is because I did not know of any parents of color starting organizations like ours, but I saw plenty of, parents of color going through the journey, and I really wanted to be there for them, because I noticed that a lot of moms, Black moms especially, that I talked to, were very, very private. They were very, very private about the journey, and sometimes I felt that they were just so alone. They were just so alone and so frustrated and just struggling. And I also tried to connect people with resources, and I wanted to be a face for us to open up more, because sometimes I feel like we were missing opportunities.
Yeah. Because
we were so private. So that's another reason we started the Kwesi Prince Foundation.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes it's a cultural trait that works against us.
Yeah.
We can be very quiet and closeted about our issues. And I think it's great. You're right. When we think about Kwesi and we see his picture, it does feel like it's something that would be easier to access, because there are people who can relate to my experiences, who understand me. Yeah.
Right.
So, Sonja, what might we not know, those who have not been impacted by cancer in young people? What is something you talked about? Things that you've heard in support groups, a common themes of a lack of understanding with people who haven't been impacted, or even those who are in the medical profession. Sometimes doctors may not understand certain sensitivities or insensitivities, and some things just may be cultural as well. So what might we not know that others wish we knew?
That's a good question. I think that others would benefit from knowing that pediatric cancer is a completely different beast than adulthood cancer. Pediatric cancer, it affects the how can I explain this? The years of life. So when a child is diagnosed at such a young age, their life is shortened usually because there are not very many drugs that are for pediatric cancer. Most of the drugs are geared for adults. They just dummy them down for children. That's another piece of the Kwesi Prince Foundation, is that we do fund research because childhood cancer only gets 4% from the government for research, and I think that's something that everyone should know. Our children just deserve so much more, but I think that's something that everyone should know, because usually the parents, we don't know that going in, but it's something that we quickly learn, that there aren't very many drugs that are specific for our children. And I think that it's important for parents who may be on the journey to learn to speak up and let your medical team know that you are in this with them. They may be the medical experts, but part of me feels like until there is a cure, you're not really an expert. But,
that's a great point.
Yeah, so don't be afraid. I think my biggest thing for parents, I talk to parents often, and sometimes they will hear about something else, maybe like another treatment in another state, and I usually always ask, well, what does your instinct say? What does your instinct say? It's like you should go for it, because another thing that I always say is you never want to wonder if. And that is one thing I am so glad with Kwesi. I tried everything. And so I would always tell people I never want to wonder what if. And I think other people should know to support parents in those journeys, because people have lots of opinions about things that they don't have all the information on all the time.
Right.
And I just think that's a big thing that people should realize.
Yeah. Yes. Sonja, I'm really enjoying our conversation, and I'm learning a lot. I'm taking a lot of notes so that I can make sure I include some things on the show notes, like, for example, Caring Bridge. And how can listeners support the Kwesi Prince Foundation, and how can they contact you?
Well, they can contact me through our website, which is www.KwesiPrinceFoundation.org, and the spelling of his name is Kwesi, and the last name is Prince, Prince, and we can also be found on Facebook at Kwesi Prince Foundation.
Wonderful.
So feel free to contact me via email or Messenger on Facebook.
Great. And even though you're in Missouri, this is an organization that helps people nationwide or worldwide?
Our programs are St. Louis specific. We only support the St. Louis metropolitan area. We are always looking for, top researchers, though, always.
Okay. Great. In our closing moments, again, I just want to thank you for coming on to Nora Speaks and sharing what you have with the audience. I believe that what you have shared with us is going to not just impact us, but also help us provide a necessary impact into our family and friends and colleagues who are, managing their lives through this. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. Now, I will say that I tried to get a T-shirt. I tried to get a T-shirt off of the website, but you were sold out. So
yes, we are.
When will
sold
T-shirts
out.
be available? I mean, I saw the rush on Facebook, and I thought, okay, well, I want a T-shirt. So I went online to get a T-shirt, and you guys are cleared out.
Yes, we are. Someone else asked about the T-shirt, and it was so funny because just the other day I was thinking, I wonder if we should do another T-shirt campaign. We try to do them in campaigns just because I'm just not really wanting to get into the merchandise business, really. So we try to do them in campaigns so we can only have on hand what we need. But we will probably do that within the next couple of months because I've had several people ask. So
well, please let me know. That way I can share with the Nora Speaks audience, those who have listened to this and have not just fallen in love with you, but also fallen in love with Kwesi through this conversation. I definitely want to make sure that we can support you and the Foundation's efforts.
I will definitely do that.
Thank you. So just my last question to you, Sonja. In all that you've seen and experienced over your journey, and as we're advising people to somehow get involved in whatever capacity that is good for them, how would you advise those who are listening to be the movement?
I would say first and foremost to advocate for funding for childhood cancer. Like I said, children only get 4% of funding, which most people don't know. Our children deserve better treatment. We see commercials about how there's been such improvement with childhood cancer. And yes, there have been with leukemia, really. But for brain tumors, there really hasn't been much improvement over the years. And I believe, I may be getting the year wrong, but I think it's 1970. Since 1972, there have only been 3 approved drugs for children. I think it's 1972. That's a long time, for us not to have new treatment for our children. And for some reason, more and more children are getting cancer. So I think that is the biggest thing that people can do to support the movement. We just have to do better for our children, and you could find a childhood cancer organization to support. We get lots of support. I do believe because so many people followed our journey, and they saw how much we were in the hospital, and one of our programs is, like I said, it's a tote bag, and we call it a tranquility tote to give to other parents. because we have so many people that saw us, in and out. But yeah, if you can find a childhood cancer organization that's doing something to help the children or help the parents, that would be great, because it's a tough journey. It's a tough journey.
Certainly. And so, for the listeners who have joined us, when Sonja talks about advocate for funding, that means contact your congressman, contact the congresswomen, and let them know that this 4% just isn't sitting well with us, and that we have to do something about this. So if we talk about most of the attention is for leukemia, then that's even a smaller percentage within that 4% that specifically is addressing brain tumors.
Exactly, or other, childhood cancers.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely need more funding. We definitely need more funding so we can have better drugs and with less side effects as well. So many of the children, they may survive, but there are so many of them die from something else, heart problems or lung problems or just secondary cancers because they were so young when they were diagnosed until they run a higher risk at getting cancer again from the treatment.
Right.
So yeah.
One of the goals is of the foundation is the funding for innovative research that for less toxic treatments for children.
Yes, definitely, because if I have to give my child a drug that I have to put on a mask and gloves, then I have a problem with that. We definitely have to do better with non-toxic drugs. And we also are looking for researchers who's researching why our children are getting cancer. Why are so many more of our children getting cancer?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is as equal as important as curing it.
Exactly.
Right. So those of us who would like to donate, we can go to the Kwesi Prince Foundation.org and we can donate there. We can contact our legislators so that we can let them know that this is of great interest to us, and support a pediatric cancer foundation in your local area. So these are some great takeaways.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Or any childhood cancer organization. We would love the support, but if funding is your thing or research is your thing, we're also doing that. But St. Jude is a great research hospital.
That's right.
Yeah, CHOP in Philadelphia, it's a great hospital. There are several great hospitals here in the United States they need funding, though. They need funding.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, Sonja, I want to thank you for being a wonderful guest. And is there anything that you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to tell people to appreciate their children. I think sometimes people take children for granted, and being a mom, being a parent, truly is a gift. I saw a mom in a grocery store, and her little boy was, Mom, 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 and she's like, stop calling me, and my heart instantly broke. I get it. Children, they can work on your nerves sometimes, but just to always remember that your children they're a gift. They are truly a gift, and not to take it for granted.
Yes, well, I thank you for that, and I thank you for that reminder for all of us. Sonja, thank you for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you for having me, Nora. I have really enjoyed chatting with you and sharing our journey.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, noramahammed.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@noraspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.